Hello and welcome to another episode of Fundy Tidings. I'm your host Jay Reamer, and with me today is Trudy Higgins. And Trudy is the co-chair of Concerned Citizens of Charlotte County. Welcome to the show, Trudy.
Thank you, Jay. I've been looking forward to this.
Yes, well, so have I. We have an issue in our community that's a very important issue, and that is that the Charlotte County Hospital is being threatened to have its operating rooms closed down, and this is a concern for many members of the community, and they have decided to take the bull by the horns, and Trudy is one of the co-chairs who is holding on to one of the horns anyway. So Trudy, why don't you give us a little background on exactly what the situation is, and then we can talk about perhaps how we might move forward.
Sure. Well, as a lot of people are probably going to remember that the government had a choices document come out, and there was a lot of community dialogue about possible ways of saving money and ways that they might change how our health care is delivered. And one of those suggestions was to close the 11 rural hospitals in this province. And the message was not received well by public, and so a lot of people thought that that was, that they had won that war and that was behind them. But in actual fact, what we have seen is that the government seems to be still determined to close down small hospitals, and they do that by closing down programs one at a time until there's nothing left except for a clinic and whatever out programs they might have. We learned that they were going to close the OR very, very suddenly. And a lot of people did not understand that the OR closes for 3 weeks every summer for a good cleanup, and they also have their vacations. Mm-hmm. So when the Premier or the Minister announced that the OR was closing on August the 8th, that was misleading, because in actual fact, it closed in the 3 weeks before that, because that's when it was closing down for the cleanup, and it wasn't going to be reopened. We were very, very upset about the process that they used, the fact that they did not contact our surgeon. They did not contact Dr. Ken McDonald, who is a dental surgeon. They just closed it without any possible warning.
Right.
The impact of that is that obviously a lot of people had bookings for procedures, and those are all canceled, and now these patients are going to be on waiting lists in St. John, and we all know that the waiting lists are forever long as it is. Mm-hmm. So our committee has been part of the Keep Charlotte County Hospital group, which many people know is a Facebook page, and we have 5,400 members on there. So we've used that Facebook page, and we're using this opportunity to educate people that we want people to know that democracy still is alive and well. And we showed that by having over 500 people attend that rally to give a voice to the government that we want the OR to remain open, and we want to work with the Premier.
One of the things, Trudy, not to interrupt, but one of the things that I noticed about that whole dynamic was that, first of all, it was a great effort that you all mounted. It was very impressive. It was supported by the community. And you had a lot of information that came to both the minister and the Premier as a surprise. So to me, that indicates that Horizon Health, who is the healthcare provider hired by the government, is not being transparent in their communication with the people who write their checks.
That's right.
So I see that as a systemic problem. So I just wanted
I concur with you on that. Mm-hmm. I think the other piece that I found very interesting, because I don't think it's well known, is that in one way Horizon is another one of the P3s. It is a private entity which is paid for by the government. Mm-hmm. Horizon does answer directly to the Minister of Health. However, there seems to be this arm's length thing where they can sort of point responsibilities to one and not the other. But in the end, the government does have the final say. And so, but Horizon definitely, they're paid to fill the vacancies. They are paid to support the hospitals. And basically, they have not done that in Charlotte County or in any of the other smaller hospitals. They are trying to kill them off with death by 1,000 cuts. And so what we're saying is, we are the taxpayers, and we want those services, and we believe that we have a right to those services. We also believe that it is more cost effective to get rid of this backlog of surgeries and provide the care and have people back to being healthy. The province has made a great deal of commitment about wellness. Well, if you're waiting for small procedures to be done, that is not a promotion of wellness. You have to get that done and get on with your life, which is, it's not being done properly. So we, after our rally, as many people know, the Premier was in town on New Brunswick Day, and the speech that he made, I think the people encouraged him to change his original message, because I think he was surprised that people were quite vocal in letting him know that they were not satisfied. And he was very open and said that he was willing to work with the people. We are waiting now for our appointment with him. We've been waiting since New Brunswick Day, but he has indicated that he is willing to work with us, the community. So we're hoping that's going to happen very, very soon. But rather than just waiting for the Premier and government to do anything, we are continuing to be proactive. We have been in active communication with some anesthetists. We've also been actively communicating with some physicians. And when you talk, Jay, about the lack of transparency, we have learned something that is very upsetting, and that is that one of the reasons why New Brunswick seems to be having problems with recruitment and retention of physicians is, from their words, the way they are being treated by Horizon.
This is a big problem, and I think that I think one of the things that I can see from what you've said as clear as a bell is that it is likely that the people in government, the minister, the Premier, anyone involved in the health department, is relying on Horizon to give them good advice. And it's basically, it's in theory, it makes sense. However, it's basically putting the cart before the horse. And rather than being told how this health system is to be delivered to us.
Yes.
The Horizon says, well, this is the best way to do it because it's going to be the cheapest. So that value is only measured in dollars and cents, not in human lives, convenience, doing the right thing. And I think that speaks to the lack of ability within the government to make decisions. I mean, and I don't blame them. They're not medical doctors. How could they make these kinds of decisions? And it's typical of a lot of departments where they rely on these outside sources, and they're not being fed the full picture.
Exactly.
And this is a downfall not only in this particular system, but in a lot of systems within New Brunswick.
Yes,
so it's reflecting.
Yes.
It's making a lot of sense.
Yes, it is. And coming back to democracy and what we're doing, we are encouraging the government, we're encouraging our elected officials to reconsider some of their positions and work with the people, because this is the right thing to do. It's like you say, we don't have to save money on every single thing, but the actual fact is that the record will show that this particular government has spent more money than saved, and they seem to be determined to continue on a path that is not acceptable to the people. And so people have to be aware. You can't just believe everything. I mean, I could say my opinion, but don't just go on my opinion. People have the information is available. You just have to go and look for it. Look for the information about Horizon. Look for some of the other pieces of information and make your own mind up. But they should be vocal. They should be speaking out to their MLAs. And I meant to say that we learned quite recently that there is another group that apparently John Ames and Rick Doucette have formalized, and it's an alliance group in Charlotte County, and we were very surprised to learn that this group has been in existence since March, and yet they have had no success and have not been open with the people. No one really even knew that this group existed. So. I think that we're proud of what our group has done, and we want to continue, and we are going to continue pursuing getting an anesthetist, because some people may not know that the OR is only open 2 days right now. That was quite a surprise to some of the other professionals, because they thought, like Dr. McDonald thought, that he could just book his patients for their procedures and there's still no anesthetist. So we have work to do, and we're going to continue to do that work.
So basically, Trudy, what you're saying is that what your group and what we as a community really want is we want the elected officials to be more transparent with their communication.
Yes.
We want there to be a major push to have common sense take some control, and we want people to be held accountable.
Yes.
And so that would mean that there should be regular reports from the government, from individuals within the government, like our MLA or our MP or well, not the MP, but certainly the ministers, the local ministers,
yes,
as to what exactly is going on.
Exactly.
And these behind the scenes meetings do not instill a lot of confidence in the constituents, and
No.
I think that that's a problem.
It is a big problem. And people also are very frustrated with creation of groups and meetings with nothing coming from them. You know, it's wonderful to sit in a room and talk for 2 hours and come out with nothing. That's a waste of people's time. You know, this is, these are important issues, and these are life and death issues. A lot of people in the media, you often hear about, well, it's only an hour from here to St. John. And as you and I were talking earlier, it is probably a little over an hour from here to St. John. But we represent Charlotte County, and Charlotte County is a huge rural area. And Campobello people, it's 3 hours for them to get to St. John. And other areas in some of the ridges, they are not just down the road from the hospital.
Well, the other thing, Trudy, that people need to also remember, especially these people in government and the Horizon Health people, and they seem to really not be invested in what's the right thing to do for the people, but what's the best thing to do for the bottom line,
right.
Is that Charlotte County is the poorest county in Canada.
Yes.
So not everybody has a car with enough gas to get to an hour
right.
away. And these people should not be treated as second-class citizens. They are every bit as important as anybody else and should be treated fairly.
Yes.
And just because the Health Act may say that you're entitled to this, that, and the other thing, it doesn't mean you couldn't be entitled to something a little bit better. And to be chopping off small expenses in lieu of taking good care of people is a real problem. I see it as a real problem.
I see it as a real problem. I totally agree with you. And I also think that another thing that people need to be aware of is that, like, for instance, we've lost another position in Charlotte County. A public health representative in St. Stephen has retired. They're not going to fulfill that position again. It's going to go to St. John. A lot of times, positions are being molded into another position. Instead of having 2 people do a job, they're making 1 person do it. Those cutbacks are coming for the middle level people who are doing the right ground up work. Yet there's no cuts to the higher level. And so any monies that are being saved seem to be going into these top salaries. And we have some of the healthiest upper management salaries in Canada. And that is very upsetting to me, that we have people that are making $250,000, $400,000, $800,000 in this province when we are the poorest province in Canada practically, and it's unusual, and it's got to stop. If you want to save some money, I think you have to go from the top down instead of the bottom up.
Well, there's no question about that, and I think that it is really important for people to be in contact with their MLAs.
Yes.
And let them know. And I mean, let the phone ring off the hook if
Yes.
that's what it takes, because it's important whether your MLA is a minister or not. He or she must stick by the constituents who put them into office.
That's right.
Not and following the party line because it's the easy thing to do, and it is not what your constituents want, is not on. And so this is what this group has come to do, and it's worked. I mean, you've stood together, you've got the attention of the Premier, you've got the attention of the MLA and other ministers, you've got the attention of the MPs for that matter, because one of them lives right here.
Yes.
And it is, it's very important that people become engaged
Exactly.
in this movement if they want their community to remain sustainable and healthy.
That's exactly right. And that's why we're encouraging people. Democracy is alive and well. Use your democratic process. Make your voices heard. Become aware of the issues. I mean, we're talking the hospital, and it is a very, very important issue, but we also have the other issue of the court closure.
Well, we've lost the court.
Yes.
We've lost the John Howard Society.
That's
and
right.
It's not as though troubled youth are just suddenly not around.
That's right.
I mean, we have problems with them all the time.
Yeah.
And so they're serious, inexpensive cuts.
Yes.
That really impact communities far more than they realize.
Well, the court is really, when we did our research, it's $1.5 million more a year for people in Charlotte County. That's what it's going to cost for the RCMP and all the transportation. And the other very, very disturbing thing is that victims of crime are not going to be putting judgments against their abusers, because A, they're not going to have the money to go to St. John to face them in court, and B, in some cases it would be too frightening because they may even have to travel together, and that's not going to happen. So I mean, the healthcare issue is our main priority right now, but the court is also. These are other issues that people need to be aware. We have to stand up for ourselves. We have a right to basic services.
Well, the thing, Trudy, that I see is, and I understand, I can understand, you know, you have to be able to see both sides of any equation to really understand the whole thing thoroughly.
Yes.
So I can understand wanting to save money, but I don't see that the money that they save is really worth it. And I think that it's really important for people to realize that if they're going to live in small communities, which we do, these cutbacks create safety issues. They create safety issues both for emergency, you know, appendectomies.
Exactly.
But they also create safety issues because the at-risk youth are running sort of free range, and there's no system to take care of that. Those kinds of things create serious safety issues in the community, and the only way that elected officials are going to respond is by doing exactly what your group has done, and that is pulling themselves together and making a stink. And it's really important because people have gotten lulled into being bystanders and like this problem will just go away. Well, it isn't just going to go away,
No.
and they're going to keep picking away at us one sliver at a time until there's
Exactly.
nothing left of us. And we need now to stand up and take a stance and say, this is not acceptable, nor is it appropriate.
No.
And I'll tell you, the way the system is set up, elected officials don't have to be elected a second time.
No, they don't.
And
I think that's been very well pointed out over the last, I think this is our fourth one-term government. Someone has got to stop the insanity and start listening to what people are saying, and that's why we're, continuing to encourage people. The decisions that are being made are not sensible, and they have to be reversed.
Now, so getting back to this particular issue with
Yes.
with the hospital, what is the current situation as far as like you're waiting for a meeting with the minister? What can we as citizens do? Because waiting is not action.
We are not actually waiting for a meeting with the minister. We're waiting
the Premier.
with the Premier and Minister Boudreau is what we have hoped, and what the Premier did indicate that he would be willing to work with us. But I think if people will voice their opinion, go to their elected officials, go to the Premier, whomever you like to, and make sure that your voice is heard. If you want to protect the services that are in Charlotte County, you have to make your voice heard. And you pointed out something that is so true. Like a lot of people think that there's no point. You can't. What's the point in us raising a fuss? It's not going to do any good. Well, our rally showed that it can make a difference, and we have to stand together for what is right for ourselves and our people. We have rights, and we have to continue to fight for them.
Well, it's very interesting because, I come from the United States, and we have a democratic system also, and a lot of people, most people, don't actually vote. And I think it's very important for people to realize that they need to vote,
Yes.
because they need their voices to be heard, and they count. And if they don't vote, then they have, it's tough to argue that they have a right to complain.
Exactly.
But I do think that being in touch with the elected officials is critically important, and I have been maintaining that for decades,
Yes.
that's the way to get things done. How do people get in touch with their elected officials? I mean, what do you recommend to people? What does your group suggest people do?
We recommend that they send letters to Minister Doucette and Minister Ames, call them on the phone, send them emails. Their emails are very easy. You can find them right on the government site.
Right.
I think basically they are, I think Mr. Ames's is john.ames@gnb.ca, and I'm
Correct.
sure Rick's is the same.
Exactly.
I think that you have to be respectful to the elected officials, but you have to put your points down and tell them how you feel and ask them to reconsider their positions.
I find one of the great lines, and this may be helpful to some of our viewers, when an elected official makes a judgment that we disagree with, oftentimes what I'll do is I'll ask them to help me understand. Help me understand how you reached that decision. Because oftentimes what happens is they'll hide behind this big cloud of the government or the system. Well, it isn't. It's individual people that make up these
That's right.
things. And John Ames, for example, casts a vote. It isn't the government, it's individuals. So I think that we need to ask them individually, how did you come to this decision? Help me understand it better.
Yes.
Because that's the only way that we're going to be able, as a community, to sustain ourselves and maintain health.
Yes.
And we are entitled to living in a healthy community.
Yes.
And we can't do it at the moment.
No.
Is what it boils down
That's
to.
exactly. Now, when you asked me about the status of the hospital, I'll just say that right now the OR is open 2 days a week. And some people were disappointed that it's only 2 days a week, but I say that's one step, and we're going to continue to focus until we have the OR open full time. There are some processes that are still in place. We still have positions that have to be filled, but we're working on that goal, and we feel that it's going in the right path, and we are doing our best to represent the people. And if anyone has any comments, if you are not already a member of the Keep Charlotte County Hospital website, or the page on Facebook, we have 5,400 members, roughly 5,400. Anyone can join it. And if you have a concern or something, you can contact us through that page, or you can contact me at my home at 466-3769. We are open to having more people involved, and we're encouraging people to talk to people in their own communities, like in St. Andrews and other areas, and form committees that can be proactive for their own positions as well. We hope to be in contact with the people in Sussex as well in the near future, because I think Sussex is possibly on the chopping block as well.
Well, you know, there's no reason for them or any other community to have to reinvent the wheel. Any other